My name is Dima. I work in Selection Company. On this seminar, we will talk about Retool. This is a solution that allows you to create front-end part of your application insanely fast. There is a lot of ready-made components such as tables, lists, charts, and different forms that you can just drop on the screen without typing a ton of code. You can connect to most databases or anything with a REST and GraphQL. It is not necessary to worry about any hard backend stuff. You only write the things that are custom to your app, like the SQL queries, API requests, or data transformers. Retool is highly hackable, so you're never limited by what's available out of the box. If you can write it with JavaScript and API, you can build it in Retool. Retool automatically logs actions like running queries and deactivating users. The logs include the user's name, the action taken, and when the action took place. And as admin user, you can check these logs. As administrator, you also can invite another users into your Retool instance. To do this, you just need to write the email into emails field and click on the invite users button. Of course, you can disable their account if it's necessary. Disabling a user prevents them from logging into their Retool account, as well as accessing or editing any tools, queries, or data sources in your shared Retool organization. In Retool, we can create groups of users for every specific role of your organization and flexibly configure access to every part of your Retool instance. Here we have three levels of user authority. Let's name it user, editor, and owner. User role has only read permissions. Editor has not full write permissions. For example, editor can delete the project. And the highest level role is owner, who has all permissions to do anything. When you open Retool, the first page that you see is the Applications tab with all projects on the server. On this page, we can create new projects, separate projects by folders, and pin these folders to the top. A resource is a safe set of user-configured properties that determine how Retool connects to data source. You create a resource for each data source you want to use with Retool. You can then select the resource with writing a query so we can interact with the data. Each resource has its own configuration options that Retool uses when interacting with data source. This configuration can include authentication, credentials, and flow, database connection settings, such as host, port, database name, API settings, like an URL, default headers, cookies, and body. The query library lets you create, run, and share queries across your organization and between Retool apps. Queries in the library are similar to functions in JavaScript. You can define variables in them, and they return a result. You can then call this query inside across multiple Retool apps, so that you're not copy-pasting the same query everywhere. Workflows allows you to create scheduled operations or webhook executions. This is a new feature that's still in beta state, and we will talk about it later. To create a new project, you should hover on Create New button and choose the option from list. Here we have several options. Create the blank from template from JSON and mobile. Mobile app is also a new feature that allows you to create app, then open it on your phone with Retool application. But first we will try to create simple application, and for this we will use the blank app. Let's type the name of our app and click on the button. After the app created, the edit page will appear. In the toolbar on the top, you can hide or show the panels, open the drop-down list with additional configurations, enter into preview mode and share this app. You can share it as a public link or with permissions of editor or viewer, or you can share your app to Retool team and maybe it will be shown on the main page of Retool website. Also, in Actions menu, you can export or import application as a JSON file, duplicate this app, clone it as a module, see the history of this application, refetch data from all queries, and flexibly customize global configurations of your app. Here we have 4 sections. On center is our canvas. On the left side, the list of all components and queries in your project. On the bottom, the panel in which you can create and configure queries. In the right panel, display menu with all pre-created components and configurations of these components. Let's start from query creation, which will fetch data for us. First of all, we need to choose the type of query. As you can see here, we have so much types of data source. Let's talk about MySQL database first. For this, I prepared test MySQL instance and simple table in it. After creating the resource, you can send SQL queries and fetch the data. But in this case, we will use REST API calls. The fields that we have to fill are the name, URL, and in case of my API, we should send the API key in parameters of request. Also, it is possible to configure, for example, body, headers, and authentication method. Now we can reuse this query with specific configurations. At this time, I want to receive most popular movies, not all, only from first page. Here you can see response in JSON. We will use this data in our components, so let's cut not necessary path. I will need only results array. Let's say that we need only results of return JSON object. For this, we will use the transformer. Also, here a lot of configurations for this query. We can add event handler that will do something on specific condition, configure notifications that we will receive, and a lot of another configurations. Don't forget to save query when you're finished. Let's work with table component. We need to drop this component on the board, define which data will be used by this table, and if you already created at least one query, the components will use data of this query by default. Remember that any reusable data from query of another component should be defined in double brackets. Also, this component will be automatically configured by itself due to received data. As you can see, the table component created columns without my help. We can reorder these columns, set the visibility of these columns, and decide will these columns be editable or not, and much more and other configurations. We have several types of queries: resource query, JS query, and transformer. Resource query allows to us to fetch data. JS query can change this data, send it to components, and trigger these components or queries. Transformer is almost the same like JS query, but it is only return the value that don't want to calculate several times. Transformer can trigger queries. For example, we can return from transformer the part of table's data and display this part in the text component. Let's drop the text component on the canvas. This is just an object that displays string values. And now we can reuse the transformer's value in text component. Also, let's review the chart component. This component represents the JSON data as a chart. We can configure it with UI, or we can create more flexible chart with JSON. Additional information about JSON chart creation you can find in docs. In the chart inspect panel, we can choose the data, the chart type, horizontal axis values, grouping for these values. We can define which fields will be displayed in the chart. And also we can move the title of each line to create chart without Retool. Will take a lot more time, as you know. Now we can add tabbed container and place out chart and table in different tabs. Here we have one not necessary tab that we can remove from tab bar, or we can add to this tab a button which will pop up the model window. For this, we need to drop the model component on the screen, click the button, and model window will be shown. Like in tab container, we can drop additional components into the model, for example, the calendar. Also, we can add the model window functionality into the table. We can change the column type of title button to model. Now, if we click on specific cell, the model window will be shown. And one more feature is that we can define which row was clicked and display in the text component the specific field of the chosen row. Let's talk about modules. You can convert any application in Retool into module. For this, you need to choose Clone to Module option. After that, clone of your application will be created as a module. A module is a reusable group of components and queries. You might use a module to reuse common components in multiple apps or split up common functionality into smaller parts. For example, you can use modules to create common search filters, build a navigation bar to use across all your apps, share forms between apps, break large complex apps into smaller, more maintainable parts. Also, it is possible to share value between module and main app. Retool Mobile allows you to create native mobile applications for iOS and Android, and then open it in the Retool app that you can download from Google Play or App Store. The only differences in simple application and mobile application in Retool is mobile applications support multi-page. Also, mobile contains 19 plus components when simple apps contains almost 100. But as I said, mobile is a new feature, so components will always add by manufacturer. Retool workflows is the new feature of Retool application which allows you to make some server-side cron job, interval job, or webhook execution without creating server infrastructure. Now we can see my pre-created workflow. The first block is the workflow trigger. This is entry point of the workflow. You can set schedule or webhook trigger. In schedule, you can choose set interval or cron. Next is a query block, in which we can create query and fetch the data. Then the JS block. There we can transform received data. After JS, we have filter block, which can filter our data by specific conditions. In loop block, we can iterate through our data. And in the branch block, we can separate the output with if-else operator and type the result in the console. Okay. The first feature is branding of Retool Enterprise. You can add custom branding to your navigation bars for a presentation mode of Retool Workspace. If you have the opportunity to stand out from a group of companies similar to you, why not to take advantage of Retool Enterprise? The second feature is custom resources. Need a source integration that doesn't exist yet? You can just create your own. The third feature is custom SSO. You can integrate with Okta, Active Directory, or any other SML or OpenID SSO provider. The fourth is connect to analytics vendors. Send analytics data to Segment, Google Analytics, and etc. Using analytic tools that are convenient and understandable to you will allow you to develop your product much more efficiently. The fifth feature is enterprise support. Dedicated engineer to help ship apps on board and train new teams and implement best practices across your organization. Enterprise support with a dedicated customer success manager and a shared Slack channel. Even in the process of low-code development, we can meet the most unexpected questions, the answers to which cannot be found quickly on our own. Direct information support from the original source is the best way to save time and, as a result, money. And the last feature is source control. Branch-based editing workflows in Retool compatible with Git. With the expansion and complication of the product's capabilities, the question of scaling development always arises. And in this direction, it is impossible not to talk about using Git. Enterprise version of Retool provides the ability to connect and use your GitHub and GitLab repositories as SCM. They are really easy to connect and configure. Using SCM allows your developers to conduct parallel development in one application, to separate the test and product environments. Expanding development without it is very difficult, and I think you really should try it. In general, Retool Enterprise version provides a set of functions that will allow you to scale your development, make it more comfortable and faster, improve conversations, and get more profit. If you have questions about Retool, you can ask. Yes, please.
How can I deploy the app created in Retool?
In Retool, it's impossible to create separated binary file, but you can export the JSON file, deploy your own instance, and then import this JSON file to your Retool instance. Does somebody have any other questions? So that's all for this seminar. Thank you for your attention. Bye.